Hello everybody, my name is Halo. Welcome back to this series where we're dealing with programming and design patterns in Python. Today we're going to be talking about command pattern, which is a behavioral pattern, which is, I think it should be an easy pattern, but yeah, let's go ahead into it. So what a command pattern does is it turns a request into an object. Okay, which is a command. So rather than you calling a method directly, what you'll do is you'll wrap that method over an object and then you'll pass it around, and whenever we want to we can invoke or call that object. And I mean, maybe it's a bit confusing, but this happens a lot in real life. Again, you have buttons, right? In GUI again. So here also, see, I have this button called code, button called markdown. What this does, this executes a function and then creates a markdown cell for me, but I am able to create it whenever I want, correct? And that is the main advantage of this. You can call this whenever you want, and also, as I call it, maybe we could trigger a log somewhere in the backend, something like that, right? So this is what the command pattern basically is. Rather than that executing before itself, once I press only, we can trigger that later. Again, another example that we can and we're going to be dealing with here is, let's say you have a remote, right? And using that remote, you can switch on, switch off appliances. Now, rather than them switching on, switching off themselves, you have a set of buttons in the remote. Each of those buttons gives a different command to the appliance, and using that command, it will do a different function, right? And that function doesn't happen automatically. It is wrapped behind an object, which you then can trigger whenever you want. I hope that you were able to understand what we just talked about. Let's go ahead and explore more and look at the code. Now, when you're talking about the command pattern, there are 5 total components. So command interface will be your interface for the command. Okay, so interface with execute, that will be the function that will wrap over the object. Concrete command will be the implementation. Again, we talked about what an abstract based class is and the implementation of the class, right? So interface would basically be an abstract based class. Okay, an abstract class, sorry, not the abstract base class, but an abstract class, and the concrete command would be the implementation of that. Okay, and receiver would be who is receiving this command, and again invoker would be who is invoking this command. So who is client? Client is the person who sets this all up. Okay, maybe we could look into a code example now so that you guys can understand this a bit better. Okay, so we're going to be dealing with a lighting system from a remote. Okay, this is what we're going to be talking about here. So first, let's go ahead with our command interface. Okay, and this will be very simple. In our case, we'll just call this command, and then we'll just do the execute of self and just do nothing. Okay, we can also add this as from abc import import abc comma abstract method. So we can go ahead and call this an abstract class, and then we can just create this as an abstract method. Okay, so that means we don't have to do anything inside. Okay, so this is our first part, which is done. Okay, next, what do? We need an implementation of this. Okay, so what are the concrete commands? So I have a lighting system, so I'll have a command called light on, a command called light off. Yeah, I think those two are alone enough for now. So maybe before this, we have to go ahead and define what a light is also. So we just go ahead there, and that would be actually the receiver. Okay, so receiver would be what is receiving the commands, which would be the light command interface. Okay, so the receiver, let's call this a light, and it'll have only true functions. One will be turn on self. You can add here, we just print light is on. And similarly, we can just say turn off, and then self, we can just print saying light is okay. And the receiver is done. So we can go ahead and write the command concrete commands. Concrete commands are the subclasses which are the implementations of this command. Okay, so similarly, I'll have a light on command. So light on. Okay, and this will implement the command, so I'll inherit from there. Okay, so we can actually go ahead and create an initialization. So the light would be this light object. Okay, so we'll store this inside self dot light is equal to light. Okay, this will make sense because when I go ahead and define this execute command, what this will actually do is this will do self dot light dot turn on. That's it. So this is what this does. Okay. Now similarly, I can actually go ahead and create a light off command also. Again, we'll take this light so that we can use the light turn off command, which we have again defined here. So what and all have we defined till now? We have defined the command interface, the config command, what the receiver is. Now we have to have the invoker. What is the invoker next? Invoker is nothing but my remote. How do I invoke this? Correct. So the invoker will have a function called press, for instance, and it'll say the command also is something that we can place. So what that will do is nothing but command dot execute. Okay, done. Now let's go ahead and use all of this. So this will be the invoker. Okay, now let's go ahead and use this. As I said, let's go ahead and create our light so that we can pass this light object in our commands. We can also create the remote also, so the invoker is also done. So on will be nothing but light on of our light object. Similarly, we can actually go ahead and create the off command also of this light object, same object. So once this is done, when we are trying to use these commands whenever I want to, rather than me going and directly interacting with this light, this class right here and calling these methods, I have packaged this in such a way that whenever I just do remote dot press of on or remote dot press of off, I will just say that the light is on or light is off. Maybe I have to define maybe some errors coming. So this will be light. Okay, this should be light off, not light on. Yeah, you can see that the light is on or light is off. So that is what the command pattern is. Now, if you guys ask what the client is, that's nothing but these driver code basically to run all of this. So this will be our client, and then what else did we talk about? We talked about the command interface so that we can implement that. This will be the command subclasses, this will be the invoker, and this will be the receiver. The light will be the receiver. So to put this into perspective, you have a light, right, which is your receiver who gets the object. We create a command which is light on or light off. What light on does is it executes this function where it takes light as an object and executes the turn on function in that light. Similarly, light off will execute the turn off function that will be under the execute. Then what happens? A remote has a press command, and now this press function, right? It just you provide a command to it and it'll just execute that command. Now it does not know what command it's executing. That's because we already handled that differently. So regardless of what the command is, as long as it has an execute function, which it should, it'll go ahead and just execute that execute function. Okay, so that will be our invoker. So the invoker is what we can trigger whenever we want. That will go ahead and trigger this command, which will run our the method originally. So rather than me running the method directly, like doing this, I can control when I try to run this method. I can run this on the fly. I can use this to log things. And also I can just trigger this whenever I want. So that is the command pattern. I hope you're able to understand this very simple implementation of this pattern. If you guys have any questions, let them know down in the comments so that I can try to answer them to the best of my abilities. Thank you so much for watching this video. As always, all of this code is there in our GitHub repo, link in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Until then.